Jim, the boy's daddy said, "You're 8 years old now, going on 9. From now on, you're going to have to buy your own clothes." The Baptist minister who spoke those words was not a cruel man. Long after his daddy's death, the thing Jim remembers most about him was his kindness. But he was a man of strong convictions. One of those convictions was that any able man must work his way. And Jim, by his work in the hayfield, had proved himself able at the age of 8. With his savings, Jim bought a pig. From that pig he raised a litter, and from that day on he did buy his own clothes. Their farm home was in the tall corn country of Log Creek, Missouri. When Jim was 20, he was apprenticed to a storekeeper in nearby Hamilton. Within a year, he was on his way as a successful salesman, but at the end of that year of long hours of hard work, his health broke. The doctor told him he must never go into the store again. He must go west for his health or die. So Jim went west. It was not long, though, before the ambitious boy was back at work, this time for a dry goods firm in the Wyoming Rockies. One day, his employers, recognizing the young man's merchandising ability, offered him an opportunity to run a brand new store in the town of Kemmerer. Out of his earnings, he would be allowed to eventually buy a 1/3 interest. Because the exciting story of this merchant genius is a long story, let me telescope the years that followed. He married Berta in 1901. Monday morning, April 14, 1902. Day broke over the muddy streets of Kemmerer, Wyoming, and down at the end of Pine Street, a 27-year-old man was sweeping the wooden sidewalk in front of his new store. The sign over the store said, "Golden Rule." Jim tended that store from sun up until after the last customer left at midnight. Then he and Berta walked up the outside stairs to their home above the store. Their room was an unfinished attic. The dining table was a dry goods box upside down. They used shoe cases for chairs. There were no windows, and a kerosene lamp was their only light. But their first day's receipts totaled $466.59. The Golden Rule store was on its way. 6 years later, Jim bought that store and 2 more for $30,000 cash. By now, Jim had learned to employ other persons as he had been employed. He allowed each store manager to earn a share of the business as well as to divide its profits or its loss. Jim added more links to the chain, more stores to his name, until, 12 years from that start in Kemmerer, by 1914, he was operating 71 stores. Another 3 years, 177 stores. By 1928, Jim's chain of retail stores numbered more than 1,000 and grossed more than $176 million per year. Then 1929 hit, and the Great Depression. Perhaps you have recognized the pioneering beginnings of J.C. Penney stores, and that the boy from Log Creek was James Cash Penney. But the meteoric success of this famous man has been such that the struggle has been obscured. A recent generation which has misused, and so mistakenly, enhanced the importance of the word luck, may never use that silly word again after knowing what follows. Christmas Day, 1910. Tragedy has shattered Jim Penney's most important partnership. Berta died. Jim had convinced himself that his increased chain of stores was a monument to her, to the dream they had launched together, in order to force himself past the dark abyss of loneliness and plunged ahead with more expansion, and more, and more. By 1929, Jim's interests included a bank in Florida and many-fold philanthropies. One was a home for retired clergymen. For clergymen, like his father, were not paid in that day, and many died destitute. When the crash sent Wall Street values plummeting that Black Thursday of 1929, Penny's stock went down as well. But his low-priced merchandise became an urgent need, so the business prospered. By 1932, almost 1,000 new branch stores had been established. Still, Mr. Penny's personal fortunes were not faring so well. Never accepting a salary, he lived entirely off his stock dividends, and those dwindled away during those Depression days. James Cash Penny stubbornly refused to withdraw his support from his home for retired clergymen, and instead of letting his Florida bank go to the wall with the rest, he determined to protect its investors with his own personal fortune. And suddenly, one day, borrowing more and more against his stock, he was broke. And he was only 56. And he was $7 million in debt. One night in 1931, penniless Jim Penny was committed to a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. A frail, nervous, and physical wreck, burdened with remorse for what might have been, and terrified of what lay ahead. This man, almost 60, had suffered the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that he was convinced in his twisted reasoning that even his family was against him. His fortune? $40 million. Gone. His stores? Gone. His health? Broken. He wrote farewell notes to his family and stretched out on the sanitarium bed to wait for the end. Instead, merciful sleep came. When Jim awakened very early in the morning and discovered that he was still alive, he was at first disappointed. In some vague way, he figured there must be a reason, but he would not strain to puzzle it out. It was still dark, as he, restless and apprehensive, got up and dressed. Round-the-clock nurses had been assigned to watch over him. But it was still between shifts. He might elude them if he moved quickly. Drawn by some obscure magnetism, Jim got downstairs. The immense aloneness was closing in. He moved swiftly now, but stealthily along a corridor. Suddenly, he heard music. It was a hymn. It was coming from the sanitarium chapel. Instinctively, Jim's Baptist upbringing urged him to seek out the music. The music grew louder, more clear, and then he could hear the words, "All you may need, he will provide. God will take care of you, lonely and sad, from friends apart. No matter what may be the test, God will take care of you." Jim entered the chapel, found a seat in the back, and listened. "Be not dismayed, whate'er betide, God will take care of you." Someone read a scripture next. "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden." But Jim was not paying much attention now. It was the words of the music which had managed the quiet miracle, as Jim got up and started back towards his room. The night was ending. I do not intend to analyze the intimately personal transformation which James Cash Penny experienced that morning. It is not for us to judge. Yet if by their fruits we may know them, Jim Penny arose from that bed of despair for a greater mission than he might ever otherwise have known. After that miracle in the Michigan hospital, Jim regained his physical strength and his mental health. He shut out the dark and dreadful past and ignored the uncertain future. He locked himself into a day-tight compartment, prayed for just enough strength to face the problems of that day. He went home. There were no servants now, no big house on a lavish estate with White Plains, just a small apartment and a salary again, a small salary. But James Cash Penney had discovered riches greater than all his long-lost 40 millions of paper dollars. And with that newfound faith, and at an age when most men think only of retiring, he started over. Started over at 56. Now there's a man. Though it was not easy, where once he had relied on the power of money, and it had failed him, now he could rely on a far greater power, and it did not fail him. In the years since, he has spread the gospel of Christian principles in business into the remotest reaches of our economic jungle. Once he gave 28 speeches in 23 days, and all of them on that and allied subjects. His messages on faith and on his personal adventure with the Golden Rule have inspired millions. Today, James Cash Penney is known the world over as the merchant prince of the Golden Rule. Once again, he headed the vast empire of department stores which bear his name. There are J.C. Penney stores in 1,661 American cities and towns, and the man who wanted to die at 56 was in 1969 a healthy, happy 94. Again, he had been rewarded with those material blessings which are a byproduct of the good life. His storefronts in 1,000 towns are an inspiring reminder that the American dream is still good. His personal reward is of the more timeless, priceless stuff, a serenity of soul which he can share with us all, and yet keep forever for himself. Now who would have thought? This is Chris McCray. Take care of yourself and the ones you love most.